it's like you had to actually be involved, otherwise you were just out of the loop.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm here with Ian Cookson, and he has agreed to participate in my punk shoes project, and we're going to ask Ian a few questions. First of all, thank you, Ian, for participating. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right.
Glad to help out.
So, Ian, what was your first introduction to punk rock?
I'm sure everyone's recollection is different, but what I like to attribute it to was I moved to California in 1988 from the East Coast. I was born and raised in Maine. Then I came to Southern California. I remember hearing Suicidal Tendencies on the radio. It's also the same year I got my first skateboard, Powell Peralta. And I think those two things were like an eye-opener. And just not only the music, but just the culture in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went from a tiny little town in central Maine to, well, it's not a large town either. It's El Centro, California.
That's
so
right.
It's super southern,
yeah.
but it's right in Southern California. So there's a lot of culture down there. And mostly up north where I was from is, you know, some indigenous culture. But other than that, it's just a bunch of white dudes.
Yeah.
That made all the rules, and we all know how much we don't like those.
So you go from Maine to Los Angeles. What was like was there a big culture shock when you first arrived in LA?
For sure, it was everything was different. Probably the first time I heard somebody speaking a different language other than English in an everyday setting.
Yeah.
My bus driver spoke Spanish, and he used to yell at us in Spanish. And I remember, like, I don't know how long it took me to figure out what he was saying, but I was just like, I think he's telling us to shut up. But, you know, it's small town kid and not knowing a lot. And
so were you in high school at this time, or?
No, I was
middle school?
I think it was about 10 years old.
Okay.
You know, yeah. So it's right when you're starting to kind of shape yourself.
Sure.
You know, so I had basically half my childhood small town East Coast, the other half California.
All right. And so you heard Suicidal Tendencies on the radio. Were the kids different at the school you're going to than the school in Maine?
Yeah. And you got to remember, I also came in with an Eastern accent.
Oh.
So I've always been the odd man out,
yeah.
no matter what. And I think that also kind of pushes you towards the underground music scene,
mm-hmm.
whatever it may be that you're into,
mm-hmm.
you know, whatever you're drawn to. But I think not being able to fit in always kind of pulls you away from the mainstream because you're not the same as everybody else.
That's right.
And, you know, I met a lot of these kids. You know, I met little Mexican kids and little white kids and, you know, little white trash kids. I remember our neighbor, like maybe 3-4 houses over, his dad was like a biker dude and he was building a chopper in his front yard. I've never been exposed to things like that, you know. Our town had a ski slope. You know, that's how dangerous, you know, that's how exciting it was over there. And then to move to Southern California, and then it's like, I don't know, everything seemed just more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's so much more going on, so many more opinions, and I think the age I was, and it's a lot,
mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm glad I came here,
mm-hmm.
obviously, but, you know, it was never, I had no choice. My parents moved here, and, you know, I left everybody I knew back east and started over here, and just kind of, you know, just made it an odd situation. I'm sure a lot of people have gone through it, but we moved around quite a bit, and it was always somewhere significantly different than the last.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's good and bad.
Sure. So you started you heard Suicidal Tendencies on the radio. What was your first punk rock show?
It's kind of hard to narrow down specifically, but I do remember one show in, I think it was 1995 in Oakhurst.
Oh.
Believe it or not, Oakhurst used to have the best shows.
You know what? I just interviewed TJ McGee, and he was talking about the shows up there.
Yeah,
and I didn't even know that existed.
Well, there's a lot of people I speak with, and they just don't. They never heard anything about that. But some of the people I have brought it up to, they were like, "I was at that show."
Wow. So you went from LA, and how long were you in LA for?
Southern California. I think we only lived there for about a year or two.
And did you move to Oakhurst?
No, then we moved to Madera.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that was like 1990 or so.
So you were in high school by the time you got to Oakhurst?
No, I never lived in Oakhurst.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry.
That's just what you had to do to get to the punk show.
Okay, so you lived in Madera and went to Oakhurst for a punk show.
Yeah.
So okay.
So this was, like I said, I think it was 95. The headliner was, and I'm not a huge fan of this band any longer, obviously. Not obviously, but, you grow out of things. It was Blink-182.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what TJ was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were the headliner that night.
Wow.
Who else was there? Like Fury or Fury 66. Also, this band, what were they called? Stinkaholics.
Uh-huh.
I apologize for anybody who was in that band or anything. I don't mean to talk bad, but you guys were at every show, and we, not that we didn't like the music, we just heard it quite a bit. So we were never that excited for you guys. I apologize. But they were always at the show.
Yeah.
Like the bigger shows, they were, because I don't know if they knew somebody, all those things. Just like, I don't know how.
And lots of kids went, right?
Right. It's like, I don't know how why the show was in Oakhurst. I'm assuming somebody there knew somebody or somebody was in a band or whatever. But yeah, some of the best shows as a teenager anyway were in Oakhurst.
That's great.
So we used to all pile into my 89 Toyota Tercel. Like 8-9 people in my little 2-door Toyota and drive up the mountain very slowly because my car wasn't very fast with all those people in it, and just mob up there and have a good time. I remember being snow on the ground, and then you're in the show and there's so much energy and everybody's moving around, the pit's going, and you step outside to have a smoke or something and there's just steam coming off of everyone because we're all like, holy shit, it's so hot. But it was a blast. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
These are mostly like kids from the hills and stuff, right?
Yeah, kids from the hills, people from Fresno, the Valley in general. If you were in the know to know that it was going on,
That's great. Wow. And that happened for a few years, a couple of years?
Yeah, it was a few years. I don't know. I don't remember why or if it had stopped or if we just stopped going. But the scene here in Fresno was starting to pick up a little bit better.
Yeah.
There was like a Legion Hall on, what was that, Fresno Street or First Street? And
I didn't go to shows in the 90s. I went to shows in the 80s, but then I became a hardcore Christian for 10 years. And then
that'll take you away from the scene. But yeah, it was a lot of house shows.
Yeah.
Back then it was generally either you knew the guy putting on the show or you were out and about, and the punks used to go up to each other with a flyer, and that was the only way you found out there was a show.
Yeah.
You couldn't follow them on social media. You didn't know anything other than like, hey, the show's tomorrow. Like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, and everyone's numbers written down somewhere.
Yeah. And then you're like, well, we got one car, so if you want to come, you better squeeze in. If you don't, then that's fine. Sugar Hill Skate Park had really good shows. Yeah. I saw Naked Aggression there.
Right on.
Killer band. Seen them a few times since then. It's always been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Your most memorable show in your whole life?
Probably when I saw the Addicts at Strummers, which it hasn't really been that long.
It was about four years ago?
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
I was there. That was a great show.
Oh, it was. And the Addicts was one of those bands which I always liked, but just assumed I would never be able to see them. It's
London band, yeah.
Right. And then we went, and I think I had come from work when I was working in Madera. The show was at Strummers, so I was still in like chef pants and chef shoes, and I think it was the day before Halloween, so it was like a Halloween themed show, and that was one of those where I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. And then it started to slow down at work, and I was like, dude, I'm fucking out of here. You know, hop on the freeway, went straight to the show, and I'm so glad I did because it was an amazing show.
What was it about the show that was amazing?
It was everything I thought it was going to be. You know, the Addicts are always known to, you know, they're almost like an arena punk band. You know what I mean? They do a lot of crowd play and stuff like that. And Monkey was just like, you know, I have no idea how old he is. I'm sure he's not young.
Yeah, he's probably in his 60s.
But just like, you would have no idea, you know, if it wasn't for all the face makeup, which was
almost every song was a new outfit.
Yeah, that was the other thing. It's almost like a glam rock show, but in the best kind of way. They had like the imagery up on the wall from A Clockwork Orange, and it was great. And flyers out to the audience, and I think they were hitting around blow up pumpkins or something like that. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was a great show. He always was on a great show.
Then I think there was one other show I went to when I was a kid. I think it was in like 96, 97 in San Diego at the Sports Arena. And it was a New Year's Eve show. And they had 2 stages. The first time I've ever been to like a big thing, you know? So 2 stages, and you could just go from watching this band. I think I saw the Vandals for the first time there. But that's the orange patch on my jacket I got from that show.
That's great.
And that was like an all-night thing. I think it was probably over 20 bands or something like that. It was super cool. It's just, you know, nice to be around people who appreciate the same things that you do. They don't even have to be, like, you don't even have to like these people or whatever. Just to appreciate the same thing is good enough, you know?
Yeah. What is it about live music that moves you? Like, what is it about going to a show?
For me, it's the energy of everything. You know, we live in a society, you're told not to do this, you're told not to do that. You're not supposed to show your emotions. You're not supposed to get excited about anything, you know, and if you do, it needs to be muted, you know, and at the show, especially at the punk show, it's just, you are exactly who you want to be in that moment because nobody else gives a shit. They're all trying to do the same thing. They're just there to have fun. You're just there to enjoy the energy that the band is putting out. I think that's one of the reasons I'm drawn to like faster music. You know, it just kind of gets you going, and then that even being said, there's songs that aren't fast that can do the same thing. So I think it has more to do with with how the band gives you the energy. Yeah, I think that's the live music is. I feel like if I don't understand people who don't enjoy live music, even if the music's not that good. It's just nice to be there, and like, you know, especially if you don't have a skill set to be able to do those things, you should appreciate that because it's hard.
I agree.
Because I can't do those things.
But you're an amazing chef.
Well, you know, we all have things that we're good at and stuff that we're bad at, and just, you know, hopefully people find what their plus is and not just, you know, focus on all the bad things. Because I've been in a lot of bad situations, done a lot of dumb shit, but
me too.
I'm lucky enough to have found something that I'm good at and been able to make a living doing it. And,
that's great.
You know, yeah, for being an unlucky guy, I'm pretty fucking lucky.
That's awesome, man. Your top 3 bands.
Crass is number 1. Ever since I heard, I think Penis Envy was the first album that I got, it was just so different from anything I had heard. And their message was so much more relatable than a lot of the bands. A lot of bands are, you know, maybe a little more towards violence or whatever, you know, or whatever their message is, you know, and this was a message that was, you know, stand up against, you know, basically everything that you don't agree with. They were pro women's rights. They were pro all these things, and they were anti-religious, and just these things that people didn't necessarily talk about that much back then. And I've always, even as a kid, struggled with like faith in general.
Sure.
To be, I'm like, I just never understood it. And my grandfather was a pastor. I
Wow.
went to like church camp, and I always again felt like the odd man out because I'm like, I just don't get it. Like it doesn't seem real to me, but everyone else is just like head down following like it's normal when and then what I think is normal obviously is not compared to what they think is normal. And
so when you read the lyrics that Crass put out, you're like, wow, this it spoke to you.
Yeah. More than probably any music I had ever heard, which sounds kind of cheesy, but it's totally true. Just fucking blew my mind, man. And then the way they go about it, and it's so much more than just the music they're playing, because they have like an ambiance to their music, like, background noises and all these things that aren't just done with the musical instruments they have. It's very thought out. It's almost like making like a painting or something where, just because there's an image in the middle that you're supposed to be looking at doesn't mean that all the stuff that it took to get it there or all the stuff that's around it isn't as important as that thing in the middle.
Sure.
But it was wild. I couldn't get enough. I wanted more and more, unless they have a lot of albums, so I found as many as I could and just like dove into it.
Wow.
And it probably changed a lot about the way I view things, and probably why I wasn't one of those people who punk was really important to them, and then they got older and they're like, well, I'm not that, it's not important to me anymore.
Yeah.
It's like what they said has always been important.
Sure,
to
but
me.
because it was more than just
the
fast music or the dress. It was something that spoke to you on a intellectual or moral level.
Yeah. It was unexpected, because I'm like, fuck, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 when I heard it the first time, and it was just it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then now I have several, like 2 tattoos because of how important that was. My first tattoo, matter of fact, is their
the logo.
Yeah. Not the Crass logo, but their Anarchy and Peace one.
Okay,
with the broken gun on the top. That was my first tattoo.
Wow.
And I've had more since then, but
that's
probably so my tattoo artist was, because we're doing a sleeve, it's up here, and she's like, you sure you don't want to cover that up? I was like, I do for the artwork, but it's hard for me to cover it up because it means a lot.
Yeah.
That shit's been on there for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Doesn't look great anymore, obviously, and it messes up the rest of it, and I'm still not sure if I'm going to cover it. Like I said, I have other tattoos of theirs, but it's important to me.
Sure.
And I think if I did get it covered up, I would just put another one somewhere else. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same.
Cool.
And then of course the Subhumans, classic British punk.
Yep. Similar lyrics, political lyrics,
Yeah,
religious wars and
it's another one of those things where you can feel their point of view through the energy of what they're doing.
Yeah, their passion.
Yeah, and it's that I think maybe why I was drawn to cooking is because, they're investing all this energy in trying to teach people things, and that's kind of what I do with food too, trying to get people to have things that are grown here, and like, why pay all this extra money for shit food that's not even good for you?
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, any food can be bad for you or whatever, but Subhumans were always, like, that always got me going. I actually got a chance to meet them. I met Dick, and the band actually came here for lunch.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah. It's right here.
Oh, it's rad, man.
Yeah, and
that's really cool.
Because we went to the show, they had us drummers. And then we were out on the smoking patio after the show was over, just hanging out. We were talking shop, so we're all talking about food. And then Dick came out, the singer, and I don't remember what he asked for, like rolling papers or a lighter or something. And we're all just kind of like, well, if you want a cigarette, we'll just give you a cigarette. But what I thought was cool about the whole situation was my daughter Ivy, she was not 21, so she wasn't supposed to be in there. But as soon as Dick sat down with us, started bullshitting with us, and he's asking us about what we do, and he's like, all you guys own restaurants? And we're like, no, Kim and I own a restaurant. Like, these two people work for us, and these other people just work in the industry, so we're just talking. And Ivy was just outside the corner, outside the gate, and I see her peeking in, and she's like, oh my God, it's Dick. And I was like, Ivy. So I like stuck her in, and I set her right across from him, and she's just like, you know, hanging on every word. It was amazing. I couldn't even imagine what I would have done the age she was if that happened to me. I would have shit myself.
Yeah, they were my favorite band in the 80s.
Yeah.
I had the Daily Country Died in the back of my jacket.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The back of mine is the Subhumans.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just what they were putting out and the feeling behind it. Another one of those where the music lined up really well with the views they were trying to put out for me. And then a little bit more modern or a little newer, but kind of an oddball. My favorite bands was the Quincy Punks. They never made it like super big. I don't even think they tour anymore. But it was one of those bands where just like every record I bought of theirs, I was like, that one's good, that one's good, that one's good. And they're completely opposite from Crass and Subhumans, where their lyrics are ridiculous. It's kind of funny and just lighthearted and you know, stuff that isn't real. You know, the one song they talk about like being an adolescent with a crack lab in their basement. It's stupid, ridiculous, you know, but fun and energetic and but yeah, and even that, you know, to name 3 of your favorite bands is extremely hard.
Yeah, of course. There's so many.
You know, and I'm a moody little bitch.
Yeah.
So one day I'm super into this, and next day I want to listen to that. And I also like ska. And, you know, this weekend we're actually going to see Otoboke Beaver, which is like a Japanese female hardcore band.
Wow. Where's that at?
In San Francisco.
Okay.
They're playing at the Fillmore. And that was one of those where, because of social media, I never would have seen this band ever, you know. And I saw one of their videos of the drummer just fucking getting it, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I saw a couple more videos and watched it, and I was like, this isn't bad. I've always liked some of my feelings-wise, some of my favorite bands are female-fronted bands, because I feel like they push that boundary more, because they're even less told to yell at something or whatever, you know. They've been told most of their lives to be submissive, and, and to have a woman go out there and just fucking kill it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
it's more than, you know. It's different than when a guy does it.
Yeah,
I agree. Not that I like either or better, but when it's a female-fronted band or even just an all-girl band, and they go out there and it's just, you know, like, it's great. Like Bikini Kill, super good.
I was just gonna say that right now. Alice Bag,
the Bags. Yeah, it's forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's another question. What does punk rock mean to you? What is punk rock?
Very loaded question these days. I feel for me and my day, it was probably the only chance to be you. And I kind of disagree with the whole, like, oh, it's nice to be around people who are into the same thing, you know, or because you guys like the same music, you're friends now, because that's not true. I feel like it's one of those things that also are, if you get it, you get it, and if you don't get it, you think everyone's crazy. You know, if you've never been in it, you've never done it, you've never been in a circle pit at a fucking like a good hardcore punk show, then you don't understand. You know, from the outside, it looks like we're all in there jumping around, trying to hurt each other, this and that, and it's not really what it's about. It's more about the synchronicity of everyone doing that together and having a good time while they're doing it, while listening to people who are
Call from unavailable.
Whatever. You know, but and I think punk, it's kind of hard to put my finger on it because it's not as simple as a sentence.
Sure.
You know, I did it because mainstream music didn't do it for me. There was I couldn't relate, basically. And I think maybe that's probably the closest thing for people to understand is the relatability of not being able to fit in, or being weird, or being you know, not in the mix, or whatever. And a lot of times, you know, people make their lifetime friends in the scene, and you know, sometimes you don't. It's like I said, it's really hard to put my finger on what punk is, because it's more than just the music, and it's more than just the clothes. You know, it's, you know, because a lot of us lived in our clothes. You know, you know, the majority of us have, you know, slept in a gutter once or twice, and that's your, you know, like that jacket's like my safety blanket. You know, my security blanket that I've had, probably why I've kept it for 30 years.
Show us, right, as we're talking about it.
So my mother bought this for me, and that's one thing I haven't spoken about. My mother, to the outside, you would not think that she would want anything to do with anything like this, but my mom was always great. She used to help me put my mohawk up when I was a kid.
That's great.
And she was a teacher, you know, a school teacher who was not what you would expect, but she always had an open mind and always taught us to have an open mind. And that's another reason why I probably got into it.
So that Vandals patch is how old?
That's from, I think, 1997.
Wow. Let me see the back. Right on.
You know, just classics.
Yep.
I wish it fit a little bit better. It's a little snug these days. But yeah, there's a lot of memories in this jacket. And it's changed over the years. And the funny, I had a friend of mine who did this for me, this part. What was his name? He was like a skinhead dude.
In Fresno, or?
He was from Fresno. He was living in Madera.
Okay.
Oh man, I can't remember his name, but great guy. I don't know what he's doing these days. I'm pretty sure he's a square now, but that's fine.
Yeah.
To each their own.
What does this jacket mean to you?
This means a good portion of my life, honestly. This, you know, I wore this up until, what, maybe 10 years ago? And it's like one of those things, you know, it's like my security blanket. I've had it forever. You know, if I want to feel that again at home, you know, I still put it on every now and then to see how much tighter it's gotten.
It's more than just a jacket, right? It's more than just...
way more than a jacket.
Yeah.
And it's the same reason I've kept it for so long. It's not for anybody but me. You know, oh, and now everybody, but you know, I kept it because it means something to me, and it means, you know, it was a lot of my life, honestly, a really rough part of my life, trying to figure out who I am and struggling through relationships and bad habits, and you know, relationships with things that happened in my life that were really tough, and honestly, punk rock music helped me. You know, who knows, I mean, I have no idea what I would have been without it. Because it's hard to just take something that major in your life and just take it out, and you expect to understand what it would be without it.
Well, let's ask this question then. How has punk made you the person you are today?
I'm a father. I have 4 kids. They did that really good documentary. I think it's called The Other F Word.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being a father, and I can relate to that so much more because I think being in this culture and being in this scene makes you a better parent, because you can see how being different feels. You can see how it feels like to not have everything that some people have. Like, there's always going to be people who have more things than you. There's always going to be people who are, it just looks like life is that much easier for them than it is for you. And to see that and to realize it, and I think a lot of punk rock is self-reflection. You know, a lot of the reasons the music hits so hard for people is, like we said earlier, because it's relatable. And I think to have to raise people and to give them some sort of framework to go by, I think the punk scene is one where, you know, obviously it's different from where you came from, the city you grew up in or whatever, and it's always changed, but you know, it's very tolerant for differences that don't hurt anybody. But that being said, and one thing I do like about the scene is that when they see something bad going on, you know, they're gonna take care of it. And it's harsh, brutal, you know, judgment, but a lot of times that's what it takes, because people are always gonna be idiots. People are always gonna do shit wrong. There's bad people out there, and a lot of bad people try to hide in the scene, but you can't do it for very long because you're gonna get your ass kicked. And then
punks can smell bullshit really quick. Right?
Yes, because we've all been there.
Yeah.
You know, we've all, you know, most punk kids, most punk adults' lives were not easy.
That's right.
And this, you know, having that history makes it easier for you to teach people tolerance and understanding and stuff like that. Because I feel like nowadays we're so separated by shit that doesn't even really matter. You know, stuff you think is going to matter, but in the long run, what matters is being a good person and not what you get out of it, or, you know. It's kind of a little hard to explain, but that's definitely what I taught my children. And, you know, my oldest, that's Ivy, she has the bakery next door. They just played their first show, and she plays drums, and she, you know, they get it. It was good. My friend Caleb, you know Caleb?
Yeah.
He was at the show, and we talked afterwards, and he was saying, he's like, yeah, man, I just came to support, and I thought I was going to go in there and kind of just act like I liked it. He's like, but I actually liked it. I got my head bobbing. It's like, it was good shit, man.
That's
like,
great.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Any words of wisdom to part by?
If I could keep an open mind and stop being an asshole to the scene. If that means you gotta suck it up and apologize to somebody to keep the scene good, this is something I think a lot of people in the scene need to understand. Without you guys, there's no scene. So the more you guys beef and fight each other, the more it segregates the scene, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I'm sure anybody who's older has already seen it. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller, makes a comeback when the next generation comes around, and the same thing happens again. Because I've seen it with my generation, I've seen it with Kim's, and now I see it with my daughter Ivy's. Like, it's a community, and if you guys can't keep it together, it's just going to go away. It's going to be that much harder to get what you love.
All right. Thank you very much, Ian.
You're welcome.